This is going to be a quick overview of the maintenance costs as well as my experience with the reliability of the 2004 E55 AMG. I've owned this E55 for over 2 years now, and the mileage at purchase was 36,000 miles or 58,000 kilometers. The current mileage of the car is about 54,000 miles or 87,000 kilometers. So to start with, in December 2014, a few months after I purchased the car, I performed an oil change, which costs about $60 if you do it yourself. I replaced both air filters using man filters, which cost about $45 for both of them. Then I went ahead and replaced the transmission fluid as well as filter and gasket, which cost about $80. The year later, in January 2016, I changed the oil once again. In May 2016, a sort of squeak developed at the front of the car, which you'd notice when getting in and out or going over bumps at low speed. So I went ahead and replaced the lower control arms as well as the lower front ball joints on both sides of the car, and that solved the problem. I used the Lemforder ball joints, which cost about $50 for both of them, as well as Lemforder control arms with the bushings in them for $160 for both of them. In June 2016, I went ahead and replaced the front brake pads and rotors. I used Melee front rotors, which cost about $60 each, and Akebono Euro brake pads on both sides, which cost about $120 for everything on the front of the car. And since then I've put about 5,000 miles on the car, and the brakes have worn quite well. No dust, as you can see here. This is a couple weeks of driving, and the wheels look still pretty clean. And then I also spent about $25 on miscellaneous parts such as brake sensors, disc brake quiet, and fluid to complete the job. And then in January 2017, I performed another oil change. So now I'm going to talk about the stuff that actually is outside of maintenance and is some of the stuff that comes up with these E55 AMGs. I found that the valve cover gaskets were leaking. Not enough to be dripping on the ground, but enough to make the engine bay seem pretty dirty. So I went ahead and replaced the rubber gaskets on both sides, as well as resealed the breather covers, including parts cost about $40. A common problem with the E55 AMG and other Mercedes is something that came up for me. I found that the transmission electrical connector, which connects the transmission computer to the actual valve body, started leaking. I left a pool of transmission fluid on the ground. So I went ahead and replaced that. And just that single, flange between the connector and the transmission, it's just a plastic piece with a gasket around it, was $6 at the dealer, and not a very hard job to do. So a current problem I have with this car is that the secondary air injection pump has gone out. Basically, it's a pump that runs for 30 seconds when you do a cold start just to lower emissions. The problem is that it gives you a check engine light. So basically, I've kind of diagnosed it that the relay went bad and caused the pump to burn itself out. So what I'm planning on doing is replacing it with a used pump from eBay or something like that, and then replacing the relay. So in total, that's going to look at costing $60 about for the used pump, plus $20 to $25 for the new relay. So in just under 2.5 years and covering 18,000 miles, I've spent about $866 on this car, doing all of these maintenance jobs myself. Now the cost of that would be multiple times higher if you had it done at any kind of shop. So that's the reason why the number seems quite low. And on top of that, some things might be coming up soon, such as the battery and stuff like that, and that's going to be adding a few $100s to the mix. The truth about these cars like the E55 AMG is that they're actually not that expensive to maintain, especially if you're doing all the work yourself. And some of these jobs are not very difficult because of this generation's Mercedes kind of orientation more towards mechanics.